Hi. Oh, hi everyone. I'm an idiot. I just did the whole live stream. I wonder why you weren't saying anything. It's because I hadn't hit this button that says go live. You know what it is? I'm just going to give myself an excuse here. The reason is that just I usually just start a stream. This time I scheduled a stream. And there's another button that you have to push when you schedule a stream. I'm scheduling a scream as well as a stream today because clearly I'm not having a good technology day. Anyway, hi. Hi from Brighton. How are you all doing today? Pretty nice weather here today. Bit windy. What's the weather like where you are? I'm British, so I have to ask about the weather all the time. It's just what we do. Oh, well, hi everyone. Oh, it's nice to hear from you. Yeah, I just did this whole stream to no one. It's like, why isn't anyone talking to me? I just thought that you all hated me. Oh, such an idiot. Okay, well, let's get started soon. Let's just pass the time for a couple of minutes while people join us and realize that there is actually a stream. It's raining for Kenny. Where are you, Kenny? Hi, Steve. Hi, Rathan. James Dempsey. I'm glad you can see me. Welcome, everyone. Oh, this is better. There's humans out there. How nice. Andrew Gillard, it's been a crap week for technology there as well, has it? Where are you, Andrew, and what's gone wrong? Let me know. Rathan or Rathan? Oh, Portland, Oregon. Finally, a break in the heat. Well, how do you say Rathan? Rathan? I've never seen that name before. I can't talk. I've got an unusual name as well. Makes us special, of course. Um, Portland, Oregon. So you couldn't be further away. What must the time be? It must be real early there, huh? Isn't it like 6 a.m. or something? And you've joined us, so that's great. Um, yeah, I gather it's been a bit warm in the US. We've been all right here. Well, we had a couple of nice weeks of sun, and now it's just a bit rainy and crap again. I suppose better than a crazy heat wave, huh? Kenny, you're in Scotland. I've got lots of friends in Scotland. Friends in Edinburgh, friends in Glasgow. Yeah, there's a lot of good laser people in Scotland. Thanks for your kind comments, Erin Gabay. I don't know how to say it. Sorry, Erin. Thank you. I'm glad you think so. Rathan like Nathan, but with Rayons. Okay, Rathan. That's a cool name. Where does it come from? Thank you for explaining the pronunciation of your name. Oh, it feels so much better. There's people talking to me. Oh my goodness, Rathan woke up at 6 a.m. just for me. Oh, it's so not going to be worth it. It might be, who knows? I'm just being modest. Shall we get started? Any more questions before we begin to add to my list? Any questions about the Tom laser video with the Raspberry Pi? Any questions about lasers in general? Any questions about laser safety? Anything at all? Just ask away. And yeah, I guess I could get started properly. Let's just make sure everything's recorded. Okay, let's check my hard disk space. Still plenty there. Hi, Ian Lade. I answered your questions already, Ian, but no one heard them. They were recorded, but I think I'll do them better this time because I've had a practice. Steve Kitch in Uckfield, so we're basically the same. Yeah, Uckfield, just a few miles north of me. Just up past Lewis. I know it a little bit. Much more countryside. Andrew Gillard in Wiltshire is experiencing weird PC issues. Stuff going wrong with software he develops at work, resulting in a manic week for support requests, emails. Software development, right? Am I right? Software development, it's the hardest. Okay, we'll get started properly. So, hi everyone, I'm Seb Lee-Delisle. Welcome to my channel. This is a live stream recorded, and I've just got to check the date because it's that kind of week. It's the 6th of August. It's nearly 3 o'clock UK time. So this is a live Q&A answering questions about the recent video I posted about the TARM laser and finding a Raspberry Pi inside of it. I will be recording this and maybe making a few edits and uploading it separately. So if you're watching the live stream now, hi, in real time. And if you're watching the recording, how's the future going for you? I'm such a dork. All right, shall we get on with the business at hand? Let's answer some of your questions. Okay, so here's the first question from regular subscriber Kenny Haycox, who joins me a lot on these live streams. Hi Kenny, hope you're doing well. Kenny's question: prior to finding the Raspberry Pi in the laser, would you normally expect the system to be run by microcontrollers or by some kind of CPU running a real-time operating system? It's a great question, Kenny, and it's a great one to start off because it's quite an overview. But let's start off with display lasers. Do you need any kind of microcontroller inside a display laser, inside an ILDA controlled display laser? And the answer is no. You don't necessarily need any microcontrollers because it is basically an analog system. So the ILDA interface, let me see if I've got one. I've got a box of laser controllers over here. Just let me pull one out. So this is a laser controller. It's the EtherDream. Check it out. This is the new EtherDream, EtherDream 3. I'll probably do a video about EtherDreams soon if you're into that. So this takes a digital signal over the network, converts it into the analog ILDA signal, and you can see it's a DB25 from old school computers. It's a D-sub, 25-pin D-sub. There's pins on there which provide levels for the red, green and blue components of the laser. There's a couple of levels for the X and Y position of the laser and a few other bits and pieces as well. The spec is online if you're interested. But this is an analog output, right? So inside the laser, you don't need any digital processing necessarily. You can literally just take the signals here, amplify them, put them to the scanners, put them to the laser diodes. There you go. It's, a display laser could and is often a very simple device. Often you'll get little displays on the back of a laser and a little like rotary control and maybe a button or two, and you'll be able to go through and adjust the settings in the laser, things like the output power, red, green and blue, the size and shift, the X and Y flipping so you can reverse the output horizontally or vertically. And often you get sort of simple DMX controls that you can adjust in there. So a lot of lasers you can plug in a DMX, it's the lighting controller system. So you can plug in a DMX cable into the back of your laser, and often these little displays will let you adjust like DMX settings and stuff like that. So often you'll get like an extra little system in there. But do you need a CPU running a real-time operating system in a laser? No, I don't think so. Most of the time you don't. So that's kind of why it's silly to have a Raspberry Pi in the laser, right? That's kind of, it's too much, right? Especially the Raspberry Pi. I mean, I love Raspberry Pis, right? They're so good for when you need them. But they have an SD card, which is their storage device. And unless you have a proper shutdown process on the Raspberry Pi, there's a danger of corrupting that SD card when you just pull the power on a Raspberry Pi. One way to get around that is to make it a read-only file system, and then obviously it can't be written to. Nothing. You're never going to disturb the Pi in the middle of a write process. I never looked into the Raspberry Pi and the TARM enough to know whether it was read-only or not. That's something I should probably do later. Anyway, so to answer the question definitively, I would normally expect some kind of microcontroller if there was like an interface on the back, but you don't need any kind of microcontroller in a display laser. They can be fully analog, and I certainly wouldn't expect to find a Linux computer in there, except in maybe some exceptional circumstances. Right, so that answers that question. Next, let's have a look. Welcome, Mike's Electric Stuff. Take what apart? Which one? I already took the laser apart. I showed you it. It's the last video. I'm sure you've seen it already. Okay, right, next question. So there was lots of questions from that last video asking why I couldn't upgrade the software. So if you remember in the video, one of the issues with the web interface for the TARM laser was that it was very poorly executed. It jumped around a lot, and as Neon Fuzz in the comments identified, it's because the data is constantly coming from the Raspberry Pi. It's constantly being sent to the browser, all the data for all the settings, just constantly in a stream of data. So when you go to actually adjust one of the settings, and it's still getting the old setting sent back, so the sliders jump around, and it's really atrocious. So, obviously I'm a curious person. I've done a lot of web interface programming. If you've seen the Laserlight City project, have a look back in some of my videos. I've got a video about the backstory of Laserlight City, but that project, you control big sky lasers through a phone, and that's just through a web interface. So I've done web interface programming before, so I could rewrite their system to be less atrocious. Do I want to do that? Probably not, because actually the main issue that I have with this web server, with this web system interface, is that there's a web system interface at all, right? Those settings on the laser, I just want to set and forget. It's much more sensible to have knobs on the back of the laser for those settings, knobs and switches and buttons, or at the very least, like a separate interface there. I just want to set those things and never have to touch them again. I certainly don't want to run another network cable to the laser just so I can adjust things that I never need to adjust. Even worse, I discovered that when I have the web interface open and I turn off the laser, sometimes it corrupts those settings, right? So the X size or the Y size would be shrunk down to nothing. So next time I turn my laser on, like, all the settings would be wrong, and then I'd have to like plug in a network cable just to get it back to normal again. Thankfully, that doesn't seem to happen when I don't actually have the web interface open, but still, it's just like atrocious. Oh, it's so annoying. Can you imagine getting to a gig and rigging your laser up really far away, realizing that the settings are wrong, and then you don't have a network cable to, anyway, atrocious. R. Fletcher asks, could you replace the Pi with an Arduino? Yeah, of course. Yeah, you could. It's sort of like, and that would probably be a better process. You'd probably have a better outcome with that, right? If you put in an Arduino or another microcontroller, you could add a bunch of pots, variable resistors to the back, and you could recreate a hardware interface for all those things that you're currently adjusting with the web interface. So it would be a fairly complex process. I looked at the pins between the Raspberry Pi and the board above it. There didn't seem to be enough pins for every single setting, so I strongly suspect there's some sort of digital communication between the two boards, SPI or I2C, or even just serial, something like that. So I'd have to decode all of that, and I'm a very curious person, and part of me really wants to do that whole thing, but I have to also be somewhat protective of my time. I've got a lot of projects coming up, and I've spent a lot of time on this YouTube video for that laser already. I have to draw the line somewhere. So I'm very curious about whether I could fix the web interface. I'm curious about if I could replace it with an Arduino or just change it completely. Oh, I've just got to be so protective of my time, especially because I've got an incredibly busy period coming up. I've spent weeks doing ridiculous things before. If I'm going to spend weeks on something, surely I'd be better off spending weeks putting a real laser in a Nintendo light gun. Video coming soon, or or what else? Or fixing a ancient guitar that's that needs a complete rework. Video already exists. So yeah, I could replace it with a Pi. I could fix the web software. I've got to watch it. I've got to watch myself. I've got to protect my time. Okay, let's have a look at the comments. The ether dream. Sorry, I asked. Mike's Electric Stuff asks. He instructed me to take it apart. I said what? He said the ether dream. It's funny actually, Mike. I did open this up recently. What do you think? Do you want to see inside the ether dream? Yeah, I bet you'll. Well, let me know in the comments if you want me to open this up live on air, and we'll do it. And I can do a little mini comparison of ether dreams, and then I can edit that out and make it as a separate video. There you go. I'm getting so much content today. Okay. I'm just checking the questions. Roel asks, have I created a backup of the SD card? No, I have not. I probably should. Can you imagine? Yeah, since it seems Roel also says, actually, yeah, it's writing to the SD card every change. Of course, it would be remembering those settings, so it can't be a read-only SD card. That sounds bad. I suppose one of the options is that the SD card could have a read-only partition for the system, and it could have a writable partition for the settings. I would hope so. People reacting to my comments about the laser gun. It's one of my absolute favourite projects. I'm going to save that for a future live stream. So if you hit the subscribe button, click on that bell, all that YouTube nonsense, and then you'll be the first person to know about it. Okay, let's have a look. Right. So Lee-Delisle, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Wita, I'm sorry. Regarding the stop button in your previous video, you asked why the standard asks for an additional start switch to make sure the system stays off after a power failure if the button gets reset. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I kind of realized that after chatting. So this is my previous live stream about making a stop button. It's here. Making a standards compliant stop button, which requires an additional press of a button once you push and release the stop button. Yeah, I realized that if the main switch is off and then comes back on again, the lasers don't automatically switch on unless you push the button. So yeah, that's good feedback. Thank you, Wita. Okay, next question. Ian Lade. What brands of lasers are you purchasing for your projects nowadays? Hold on a second, because I think there was another question from Ian. Yeah, that's fine. So Ian Lade asks, what brands of lasers are you purchasing for your projects nowadays? Well, that's a very interesting question. So, I don't know how much detail to go into. Do you want to know about every laser I've bought? What do you think? Does that sound fun? All right. So, the first laser I bought was a Laser World laser, RGB 1000, CS 1000 RGB, I think was the name. It was my first laser, so I didn't really know what to expect. It was less than £1,000, I think, but it was quite a disappointing laser. I don't know what they're like now. I should probably check the modern versions, but certainly that model was a huge disappointment. The thing I didn't realize was that it actually has, and I was very new to lasers. Like, I didn't even really know what to expect, but the laser colors couldn't be varied at all. So they're either just on or off. I think that's usually described as TTL in the specs. So watch out for that. I mean, you might not think it's a terrible problem to have all of the um, lasers like on or off, but actually it is when you're working at home because it means that your laser is just on full power the entire time, right? So it can be quite hard and tiring to look at. So that wasn't great. Also, there was a lot of interference in the scanners. I'm not quite sure what that was about. And again, I didn't know if that. I just started programming lasers. I didn't really know if it was something I was doing wrong. Anyway, suffice it to say, it was a kind of terrible laser. It was a bit of a mistake to buy that, but it was a long time ago. It was 2013, so maybe that was the best there was for that price. Then I don't know. Then later came the Laser World TAM laser that you know about already. Nothing really to add there. Um, then I bought an Able laser. So that's a Chinese manufacturer who have a really good reputation, and that's probably one of my favorite lasers. But I do have to say I spent an extra £800 to get. Now, what's the name of the scanner? I think it's EMS 8000 scanners. Very fast scanners, very high quality. So it's really nice to work with for graphics. It's a really good laser. But even that one, I mean, it wasn't super cheap. I think it was £2,500, 3 watts. Um, that one had a pretty major problem. I got it, plugged it in, fuse immediately blew, put a new fuse in, it immediately blew again. To cut a long story short, opened it up, realised they'd sandwiched one of the power leads in between some standoffs on one of the PCBs, and I'd actually joined the live electricity input into like the ground. So I could have really had a pretty nasty accident there, pretty terrifying. Um, I managed to fix the problem, of course. Kind of dismayed that Able weren't more apologetic than they were, didn't offer me anything, any refund or anything, but there we are. I suppose that's just the kind of crap you have to expect if you're buying lasers. But apart from that, I love that laser. It's really nice, small, decent beam quality. It's excellent. Then I bought 4 Lightspace lasers, 11-watt lasers. I really like those, and things were getting serious then. I think they were a few £1,000s each. I got access to another 8 of those, so I was using a lot of those lasers on my projects. But after a few years, all the red diodes started going. Lightspace, to their credit, replaced the modules. But my friend Rob at Stanwax Lasers, he he realized that there was a bit of a spike going to the diodes, so he put in a soft start circuitry. He modified them with a bit of extra circuitry to make them soft start, and he also added some laser orbs. So they're good now, right? But that's a bit weird that they started going. Recently, I've just been buying a bunch of OPT lasers, really massive, 25 to 30 watt sky lasers. They've mostly been okay. There's a few problems with some of the diodes. There was one of them that was overheating. You get what you pay for, basically. But as long as you've got experts like Rob who can maintain and fix all your gear, that's it. But ultimately, I think there's not been a single laser that I've bought ever, whether it's from Laser World or whether it's from a Chinese company or whatever, that has been perfectly fine. They've all had problems one way or another. Is that just the laser industry? I don't know. You tell me. It'd be nice if they could step it up a little bit. Okay, that's all my lasers. Let's have a look. Okay, that's probably no more questions there. Right, let's have a look at my previous ones. So someone in the comments, Chandler Davis, asked for a replacement back panel. Yeah, maybe. I don't think it would work. The new back panel wouldn't work with mine, I don't think. But feel free if anyone from Laser World is watching, send me a replacement back panel. That's fine. Let's do it. So, a question from Frontier Psychiatrist is, how long have you been working in the entertainment industry? Well, I'm going to interpret that question as, how long have I been working on interactive light display projects? Because I've been doing entertainment adjacent things for my entire life. Whether it's working in theatres, being in a band, I know, TV stuff, music production. I've done a lot of entertainment adjacent things, or games programming, made a lot of games. But in around 2006, 2007, I first did an experiment with a big projector, projecting fireworks onto a building and doing motion detection with cameras. And actually that was made in Flash, right? So it's a very small budget, only a couple of grand, I think. Rented a big projector, it's got it all working, and it was quite rudimentary. There's still a video of it on my Vimeo account, actually. So if you look back at some of my oldest videos, you'll see the first time I did something outdoors. And it was such a thrill, because I'd been making computer games, and I guess intellectually I knew that thousands, if not millions of people were playing my games. It felt very removed, right? I never really got any feedback from that, right? It always seemed quite an abstract thing. So if I could just set up this thing in a space and there's a few hundred people there and it's making a really exciting event and something a bit different and a vibe, to use a cheesy word, that's a really cool, I don't know, it just captured my imagination and I knew that I wanted to do more. But I ran a company then making computer games. I couldn't just leave my company and do that. So it waited until like 2012 before I did it again. I'd sold my company to my partners by then. So I was exploring my own kind of interests. Yes, I made Pixel Pyro's interactive fireworks display. And the following year, 2013, was when I decided to add a laser to that. So it was up to then just being projected with ordinary pixel projectors, but I thought, can I just pick out bright spots with a laser? And that's when I started programming lasers. And really, so that was like the start of my career properly in 2012. Started working with lasers in 2013. So yeah, up until now, I suppose it's just got bigger and bigger and bigger. For many years, one laser per project was kind of all I could afford. Now, like the last project I did had 26 30-watt lasers in, so it's stepping up a little bit. Yeah, so I hope that answers that question. You all doing all right? Any more specific questions? Oh, Ian, you're very welcome. I hope it was useful. So I've got a question about laser safety goggles. And it was a question that came about from the collaboration I did with Steve Mould. Did you see that one where we tested out the hypothesis that you could bounce a laser off? You could bounce a soap bubble off a laser. Watch it. It's a lot of fun. It's ridiculous. But there was this question from Anon on that video. And they say, I know just enough about lasers to know that I don't know enough to safely operate a 500 milliwatt one. Laser goggles usually only block a certain wavelength, isn't shining through bubbles, which visibly splits the beam in many other colours, super dangerous. Sure, the beam expands a lot, but you were standing quite close to it, and 30 watts, the goggles fit for the wavelength of the laser surely wouldn't block the red, yellow, green refractions, would they? And if they did, would one basically see nothing through them, right? Okay, so a lot of good points to address there. So let's just start with the fact that this Anon doesn't feel comfortable running a 500 milliwatt laser. So to put that into some perspective, like a laser pointer by law needs to be less than 5 milliwatts. Often they're less than 1 milliwatt, right? A laser pointer is usually half a milliwatt. So 500 milliwatts is actually a pretty seriously bright laser and pretty scary if you're new to lasers. So that's just putting that into perspective. And of course the lasers we used on the Steve Mould video were 30 watts. So, 60,000 times more powerful than an ordinary laser pointer. So laser goggles, they assert, usually only block a certain wavelength. So that's true. There are many laser goggles that just block a particular wavelength. But you can also get laser goggles that block a lot of wavelengths. In these RGB lasers, they've got separate red, green, and blue light sources. So that means if we end up refracting that into its constituent parts, we're still only going to end up with red, green, and blue. But either way, those three colours are still within the blocking power of the goggles that we used. And these are the goggles that we used. I've got them here. Let's open them up. Here we are. Now you can see these are very trendy mirror goggles. And when I put them on, well, first of all, I can't see anything. Second of all, my camera adjustment, auto adjust, goes a bit erratic because it can no longer recognize my face as a face. These are very they hardly let any light through, and they're mirrored on both sides, so it's quite weird. I can see my own eyes when any light gets in around there. I can see my own lights, so they're quite freaky to work with. Do you want to have a look? There you go. Why don't you see what it looks like through there? So you can see a little bit of me still through them, but you can mostly see the reflection of your own camera lens. I'm going to take them off because I literally can't see anything. So these glasses, so safety goggles have a rating system. It's the OD rating system, and these goggles are OD4. So to explain what that means, the OD rating system, if you start with OD0, that stops none of the light going through. All of the light, 100% of the light goes through the glasses. I think that's a physical impossibility, but let's just assume that that can happen. OD1 lets 10% of the light through. OD2 lets 1%. OD3 lets 0.1%. And OD4 lets 0.01% of the light through. So it's a 10,000 times reduction. So in theory, if I were to take these goggles and have the 30-watt beam go right into my face, only 3 milliwatts of light would end up going through these glasses, so safely below the sort of legal limit for a laser pointer. I still would not do that, right? The thought of a 30-watt laser coming into my face with or without these goggles, terrifying, but yeah, at least in theory they would be safe. So is that all the aspects of the question? Yeah. So the final part is if they did block enough of the colours, you would basically see nothing through them. Well, you see something, you see 0.01% of what was there before, and if it's dark enough around so that the reflections getting in aren't too crazy, you can see enough to make it work. So I hope that answers that question. Rathan, games programming. Rathan was also in the games programming industry for a bit. It can be pretty rough. That's for another time, I think. Rathan discovered me from the Steve Mould video. That's great. Those collaborations have been really good for my channel. I should say something, actually. I don't want to sound like I'm whining, because I'm really not whining. My YouTube channel is doing great. I've got nearly 12,000 subscribers. All my videos get 1,000 or so views, except like I think the Steve Mould ones had 100,000 or something. So yeah, everything's going great. But I do notice whenever I post a video that I lose a few subscribers. I think that's probably because most of my videos are just quite niche, right? A little bit nerdy. So people coming to me via Tom Scott or Steve or someone else, like maybe just thinks, oh, it's too nerdy for me and unsubscribes. That's fine. You know, I don't hold it against you. But if you're not subscribed and you're into this nerdy comment and you're into this nerdy content, yeah, why not subscribe? Just keep those numbers up. It's funny, they go down a little bit when I post and then creep up again. But I can't get over like 11,780 or something. It just keeps. We're all at the mercy of the YouTube algorithm, but I refuse to pander to it, right? I refuse. If you ever see a thumbnail like this, just send me a strongly worded message. Okay. Any more questions? That's cool. I think that's I'll probably start wrapping it up. Yeah, you're doing good. Let's start wrapping up. So let's close it out by saying thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you like this sort of content, please do subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. But I will stick around a little while if you've got more questions. Let's just chat for a bit while you're here. Talk about the weather a bit more if you like. Oh, I threatened to open this up, didn't I? Should we do that? Mike's Electric Stuff says, it should be possible to make narrowband laser glasses that only block the specific wavelengths but let enough other wavelengths through to see what you're doing. Do they exist? I don't know, actually. I mean, if you can make filters that block a particular wavelength, then presumably you can overlay those to only block the ones that are coming out of your laser. I haven't seen them. I wouldn't be surprised if they existed though. Yeah, Alex asks, how often do I do these live streams? That's a good question. I've actually started to try and do them a bit more regularly, and the reason for that is because in a lot of ways I find it much easier to talk to a camera on a live stream rather than just in a recording. I've got a lot of live presentation experience, and so in a way I'm used to winging it, but if there's no one there, I don't have the energy, I think. So I think I'm going to do live streams much more regularly. I'm going to try and aim to do them on Fridays, because I think that might just be a good way to make most of my videos, just to create a bit more energy. Okay, Mike, are you ready for this? Inside of an ether dream. So I did take some pictures in here, so I can send you some high-res pictures. There, it looks like, oh, it's an STM chip, I think, as the main processor. I've been looking around to try and find the DAC or DACs in there, because there are two 16-bit DACs for the X and Y, and there should be 6 other 10-bit DACs for the other various channels. So I had a bit of a hunt around for the DACs. I couldn't find them. I found a few buffers. I found the Ethernet chip. Yeah, I found quite a few bits and pieces, but I couldn't find the DACs. I will do some videos about ether dreams, because this is the 3rd version. It's about half the size of the previous versions, and that is great, right? But there is a bit of a problem with this. They've gone USB-C for the power, and I don't have anything against USB-C, but all of my setup is optimized for 12 volt DC jacks. So the previous versions of the Ether Dream not only had jack inputs that had a very wide power range, but they also had some screw terminals inside, so you could actually fit this inside a laser and power it through the screw terminals. I don't know if you can see any of the detail on this to be any use at all. Anyway, so the fact they've gone USB-C has really messed me up because I don't quite know how to powering these DACs where the laser is really difficult because you don't really want to have like a power supply in the rigging hanging around like a normal DC jack power supply hanging around, do you? So I've ended up like building in, like I did with the Tarm, I put in a feed into the interior power supply in the laser so I could power my ether dreams through that. But yeah, I can't do that with this one. So I don't know what to do about it. I'm a bit annoyed, to be honest. I've messaged Jacob, who makes the ether dreams. He doesn't often, he's not very easy to get hold of. He doesn't usually contact people. So not ideal, but let's see what he comes back with. Steve Kitch, an ARM can have a DAC built in, can't it? I did actually look up this chip. It's the STM32F750. I don't think this particular model has DACs built in, actually. I did look it up. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Okay, I'm going to start wrapping up if that's all the questions. Oh, Ruta asked, did I see EEV Blog's laser teardown video? I didn't. He did something about a gas laser, didn't he? I find it difficult to listen to his voice. I'm sorry. I'm sure some people find it difficult to listen to my voice as well. So it's very much a personal thing, but I can't watch his videos. I'm sorry. I'm sure he doesn't watch my videos. I'm sure he won't be on my live stream. But if EEV blog man, whatever his name is, I forget, is here, I'm sorry. I can't listen to your voice. I'm really sorry. Okay, Rathan says the Anker's USB-C power hubs use 12-volt inputs, so I could customize something. Yeah, it's just more hardware, isn't it? Mike says EtherDream site says power can come via internal header. The EtherDream site is way out of date. He hasn't even really updated it for EtherDream version 2, let alone version 1. But the EtherDream version 1 and version 2 both have power via internal headers. If there's an internal header on this to put power in, I don't know where it is because none of them have been documented. None of these look like power inputs. There's some small little JST type things there, but they look too small. They look like data. Maybe on one of these, but these all look like similar sockets on the older versions. But the older versions just had a nice beefy couple of screw terminals for power. I can open up one of the older ones. Hey, in for a penny, let's do it. So here's an EtherDream 2. EtherDream 2, I think, is the pinnacle of the EtherDreams. So it's here. Can you see the size difference is significant? It's not quite half the size, but it does make a difference. But if I can't put in my 12-volt jacks, then it's no good to me. I've got about 30 of these, by the way. I just bought 2 of the version 3s. Jeff Miller is with me on the voice irritation front. Thanks, Jeff. I'm glad to know. I'm sure I'm not the only one. People have commented that they hate my voice. I'm sure that's fine too. You can't help your voice, can you? If people don't like it, I'm not going to take it personally. Right, bear with me. It's the last couple of screws. Here we are. So I'm just trying to wonder what else was sacrificed to get the smaller form factor of the EtherDream 3, because the EtherDream 2 didn't seem to have like, you know, a ton of space on it. I suppose it is quite. Oh, it seems to have a different processor on it actually. This one. If you compare these, like the actual processor is smaller on the new one, but you can see this screw terminal here is where you can put in the external power. It's funny because there's an LDO on it, it's that one, and it looks like the same one on the new one. So in theory, I feel like the new one should be able to accept a similar voltage range to the old one. Who knows? If I had, I'll trace some of the part. I'll check some of the paths and the traces on this and see if I can figure it out. Exile2828 asks, have you ever accidentally burnt anything with a laser beam? Yeah, I have. I haven't set fire to anything though, and it's always only in my room here. It's never in public. I mean, let's think about this. So the times when you're in danger of burning stuff is if you get a hot beam that is static for a small amount of time. And if you're close to it, further away you are from it, the less likely it is to burn it. And if you're outdoors, often I'm pointing lasers at buildings and stuff. Masonry is unlikely to burn, especially if it's outdoors, especially if it's in winter, especially if the laser's far away. So all the times I burn stuff is when I'm at home experimenting with stuff. Usually when I'm experimenting with code. So yeah, it's something to watch out for. Like there's a kind of wooden lighting, what should I call it? Bit of interior design that I've been working on for years. When I finish it, I'll do a video about it, but I accidentally put a little burn mark in that one time. It can be easily done. And if you watch the Laserlight City video, you'll see that I was working with 30-watt lasers. And when you're sort of working with those in a small space like this, that's a terrifying prospect because any of those beams can just start burning stuff. It's really, that's a lot of power. So it's something you have to be aware of. I've got a small fire extinguisher here just to be safe, but usually it just starts burning, you get a little bit of smoke, and it doesn't usually combust, but it's something you've always got to be aware of and prepared for. Merlin asks, have you ever been in trouble with the authorities due to lasers? Do you need permission to use them? How do you avoid pilot's eyes? Okay, so in the UK, Merlin, are you in the UK or are you in a different country? All countries are different. I'll wait for you to answer that. But in the UK, if you want to point lasers up in the sky, you need to let the CAA know, the Civil Aviation Authority. You fill in a form. It's the same one that you use if you're doing a fireworks display or a balloon release or something like that. And usually they just won't get back in touch with you, but they'll put the notification on the NOTAM map. That's the information for pilots. So any pilots would check the NOTAM map before they do a flight, and so they'll be aware that lasers are going off in the area. If you're doing it close to an airport, then the CAA will insist that you get in touch with the local air traffic control and liaise with them and get permission from them as well. Leeds and Bradford Airport, when we did Laserlight City in Leeds, were amazing. We'd call them every night and let them know something was happening. They'd let us know if an airport was going over, so we'd turn off the lasers. Laserlight City has an airplane mode where where a little message comes on all the phones saying, there's an airplane going over, and all the lasers switch off. For an upcoming project, the local airport was really concerned, so we did some calculations. So with those 30-watt lasers, they are... Let me see if I can remember these numbers. I can't remember the exact values, but it's something like... It's just under 2,000 meters. Like, you can cause eye damage with these lasers, at 1,500 meters away, right, theoretically. You can also cause flash blindness or dazzling up to like 3,000 meters away. So we've got to let the aeroplanes know that that's an issue. However, the thing we realise with Laser Light City is that the lasers are generally pretty low. It always looks better if the lasers are super low, um, because they're just closer to you and they're coming more towards you. Like the thing I learned, if you watch the Laser Light City video I posted a few weeks ago, the thing I learned was that if you're pointing the lasers straight up, they're not as visible as if they're coming towards you. And that's the same for all laser beam effects, really. So if you're at a gig, you'd want the lasers to be going over the people's heads, never into their faces. You have to avoid that. But yeah, so the thing we realized was that because the lasers were so low, I think 10 degrees or below, something like that, it meant that by the time we got far enough away for it to be safe, we weren't actually at that high an altitude. So we worked out that actually any aircraft that were above 2,000 feet would be completely unaffected by the lasers in both for retinal damage and also for flash blindness, dazzling danger. So once we figured that out for this particular upcoming event, the airport, we're fine with it and we're happy to let it go. So yeah, oh, we're very used to dealing with airports now. Mostly they're totally fine. In fact, Leeds were so cool that like the first night or two, they'd call us and be like, "Oh, there's an airplane going over." We'd stick it in airplane mode. Once they realised there wasn't really any danger of anything, they just didn't bother anymore. They just didn't bother calling us, didn't bother turning it off. One time there was like an air ambulance, and we were just like, "Oh, we should probably, shouldn't we do something about that?" We called the airport, and they were like, "Oh no, it's fine, it's fine." But we did turn them off anyway. We were just a bit nervous. And just as the helicopter, like obviously it was some sort of patient or accident or something that was being dropped off at the hospital. And when they took off, we could see they were out of the range, so we turned the lasers back on, and they just hovered there for a few minutes, just watching the lasers. It must have been a really, really good view from there. So yeah, lots of interesting stuff with the aircraft. But on the whole, the way we use the lasers, as long as they're over 2,000 feet or over, 1,500 meters away, it's safe. Rathan asks, have any opinions on smaller pocket portable lasers? Yeah, I do have one of these. Actually, I just so happen to have it here. Why do I need this? Well, let's just start off with what it is. It's a handheld laser. It was advertised at like 3 watts. That's ridiculous. I actually had it measured and it's 50 milliwatts. So it's 10 times brighter than the legal limit for a laser pointer. Or at least for a class, class 3 laser? I can't remember. Yeah, class 3, which is laser pointer. This has a diffraction grating on it, so it's actually quite safe in its current form. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it on the wall behind me? I might need to turn the lights off. Should I do that? Let's turn the lights off. There you go. Oh, might help if I turned it on, eh? There you go. Can you see that? Just about make out the little dots. Oh, it's pretty. And so there's a diffraction grating on that. So when there's a diffraction grating, obviously the power of the laser is getting very distributed. So it's pretty safe. There's ways to work out if it's safe as well, depending on how far away I don't know if you can see, but there's one bright spot right in the middle, and then it gets slowly, slightly lighter, less bright as it goes outwards. Let's take this off. It makes a very good beam, this little thing. Can you see that? Yeah, right. So that's actually pretty hard to look at. And it's reflecting all over the room, so I have to be a little bit careful. The reflections probably are quite safe, but yeah, don't try this at home. This is a useful laser because it leaks a bit of infrared, and I'm going to do some upcoming videos about some upcoming projects I've got that use infrared motion detection and tracking. And because this leaks infrared, it's really useful to test my infrared cameras with and for me to do some alignment with. So that's why I've got this. I noticed that Raytheon says like the controllable ones, not just a little pointer. Smaller I've the smallest ones that I've used that are controllable are the laser cubes. I did a recent video about the laser cube and I hacked it, so I haven't seen anything handheld and controllable. I don't know, unless you get, maybe I don't know what you're talking about, Raytheon. Send me a link. Mike says maybe I could use Flight Radar 24 to automatically disable. We do have Flight Radar 24 up on our screens at all times, so we can keep an eye on that. I guess, have they got an API? I find Flight Radar 24 to be really hard to use. I expect they've got an API, but if it's as difficult to use as their website, I can't imagine it being much use. But yeah, we do have Flight Radar 24 open all the time to keep an eye on it. Loads of Chinese, so XR2828, lots of Chinese pointers don't have any IR filters. Most laser diodes that are green don't have IR filters, actually. I suppose some of the more reputable laser pointers would, but it's quite common not to. And actually for me, that's what I want. Obviously, I never point them at anyone, but I want IR to leak out for my infrared cameras. So it's funny because I'm using a fault of those cheap lasers to actually to my advantage. So more questions. Andrew Gillard says, lol, yeah, I have a 405 nanometer laser pointer that's labeled less than 5 milliwatts and class 3, but I don't trust that at all. Yeah, it could be over spec, but actually less than 5 milliwatts is still really bright, right? So it could look really bright and still be within safe boundaries. But yeah, obviously, if you're getting poor quality cheap lasers from China, I would not expect them to be within spec. So again, if you're using lasers in public, either get reputable lasers or do your own tests, which means you need a laser measuring device, and they're so expensive. But that's a whole other story. Okay, cool. Should we start to wrap it up, I think? Last chance for any last minute questions. So just give it a few minutes. Oh, it's been alright today, isn't it? Better than earlier. I had a practice run. For those of you just joining us, I did an entire live stream without broadcasting it. I'm so professional. Fish37, what actually are we talking about? You tell me, my friend. It's over now anyway. I'll put it up. You can watch it later. Sorry, Fish37. But I tried to put it in my... I tried to schedule it this time, so you should have had some notice. Perhaps you haven't hit the little bell on your subscribe button. That might be worth doing. Who knows? XL2828, what's the most shocking, scary laser you have seen for sale on eBay or Amazon? Oh, I don't know. It's not something I really keep an eye out for, to be honest. I think if you don't watch... Oh, is it Styro Pyro? That's the name. Doesn't it? A brilliant YouTube channel. Some people find him annoying. I find his sense of humour quite dry and entertaining. But he pulled apart a tattoo removal laser that was genuinely terrifying. So if you're into shocking, scary lasers, check out Styro Pyro on YouTube. Absolutely amazing. Well, Fish37 was out hiking and missed the notifications. That's okay. It's good to get out, get some air, get into the real world. We don't want to be stuck behind our computer all the time, do we? But Fish37, don't worry, because this stream I'll post up. I'll keep it unlisted, but I won't make it private. So if you can keep the URL for this video after I've finished the stream, you'll be able to watch it back. So everyone's happy. Okay, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining me. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It's been nice to get some live questions and feel that I'm not broadcasting to no one like I was earlier. Such a noob. But yeah, any more questions, let me know in the comments here or on any of my videos. I'll try to do live streams every week or so as long as I can. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for joining us. And now I'm going to play us out with a little video. See you all soon.